take a look at the matchup from the Carolina angle. Let's go down to Carolina and take a look at the Panthers, who come off a loss to the Washington Redskins. Dave Newton covers the Carolina Panthers, ESPN.com, NFL Nation. He joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. David, thank you so much. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I agree it's a big week for the Eagles, but I believe it's a big week for the Panthers as well. I think they're both at that juncture now where somebody in the NFC's got to step up and say, other than, the Rams and the New Orleans Saints, is we can contend for this thing, and I think this is the time to do it. The Panthers coming off a really, I thought, bad loss to Washington. I thought they had everything kind of going in their favor, and Washington was kind of beat up a little bit coming off a bad game on a Monday night. Panthers kind of laid an egg. So, yeah, I think it'll be a big game for both teams.
Yeah, and then the one game down there was big last year. That kind of propelled the Eagles into serious contender status, and it kind of showed Carolina was a playoff team, but maybe not a Super Bowl team. This game here, I agree with you. The winner of this game, I think their outlook really changes, and if a loss occurs, I mean, Carolina would be at 3-3 in that division with the Saints. It'd be tough for them to think about winning that division all of a sudden.
Yeah, because I think the Saints are for real. They're gonna be tough. And they got 2 games. Well, they do have 2 games out of the last 3 against the Saints at the end of the season, so there's time to make up ground there. But I don't think you can fall any further behind. And for Carolina, I think it's important to win a game on the road. They're 0-2 on the road right now, and 3-0 at home. And to be a legitimate contender, you got to find a way to win on the road. They just haven't been able to do that so far.
You look at Greg Olsen, he's limited. He's been like that. They mentioned that's the new norm for them. And I'm interested to see, what their offense looks like this year with Olsen. Typically, their top weapon kind of up and down with the injury. You got Funches. McCaffrey, I thought last year, he had 10 catches in that game, but they didn't utilize him in the run game. I feel like they didn't know what he was at that stage last year, but have a much better vision of what they want to do with him now.
I don't think it's that they didn't know what he was. It's just they still had Jonathan Stewart, and they were really intent on trying to get the double whammy going, kind of 1-2 punch, and it just didn't work out because Jonathan Stewart just kind of was a shell of himself. And when North Turner came here as the offensive coordinator this year, he was determined he was going to make McCaffrey the centerpiece out there, and he's done a pretty good job. I was a little surprised last week that they didn't stay more involved with McCaffrey. They kind of got away from him after falling behind, and couldn't really get him involved in the passing game like I think they wanted to, and especially the running game, because the game before he had 184 yards or whatever rushing. So they're really committed to him. They want him to get that 25 to 30 touches a game mode, and they didn't come close to that last week. So it'll be interesting to see how they use it this week. But the one thing with North Turner's offense I've noticed so far, though, is he kind of goes with who has the hot hand. I mean, if McCaffrey is not there and Funches is there or if Olsen's there, they're just going to try to take what the defense gives them, which I guess is what you're supposed to do anyway, but they're not going to force the ball to McCaffrey is what I'm saying.
Well, what the Panthers like to do, they're 4th in the league in rushing, David, and the Eagles are pretty good against the run. They're number 2, fewest rushing yards allowed. So is this a game where Cam Newton is going to have to try to make some plays with his legs and maybe rolling out and getting Funches involved? Is throwing the ball against the Eagles the game plan for Carolina?
It was interesting. We were talking to Ron Rivera today about how Philadelphia has been stout against the run, and he wasn't putting down their run defense at all, but what he was saying was that it wasn't so much they've been great at stopping the runs, that teams haven't tried to run as much this year against them. They've gone to try to throw the ball more against them, I guess partly because they're kind of banged up in the secondary too. So it'll be interesting. I think Carolina's going to come out here and try to establish the run right away and try to get that going, because that's real key for them to get that play action passing going and do everything that North Turner wants to do and make McCaffrey as effective as he can be. They were able to do that against Cincinnati really effectively, and I thought that was when they really looked their best. So even though the Eagles are, like I said, ranked 2nd against the run, I think they're going to come out there and try to run at them early to establish that, because I think it'll be tough for them to win this game if they can't run the ball.
David, looking at it from the Panthers side of the fence, what's your biggest concern for the Panthers going up against the Eagles besides Carson Wentz? What are you looking at with this matchup where you're saying, boy, they can really have some trouble against this person or against this unit?
You probably just talked about it. Just can they run the ball? If they can't run the ball, it's really tough, and I think that's what they've got to do. I mean, Offensively, I think the Panthers have enough weapons to stay with them and be competitive in this game. And defensively, that's the one thing that's kind of been interesting. This team I thought was going to be a top 5 defense to start the season, and they really haven't played to that level. Getting Thomas Davis back last week, I think, was going to help, but it took a while to kind of mesh. And Ron Rivera was talking about that again today, too, is, he's had a different secondary to start every season, and they've had some changes in this one even as the season got underway, because they brought in Eric Reed when they had some issues with Denard Searcy going down for the year. So they're kind of still adjusting some places there. I think there still could be a top 5, definitely top 10 defense, and it's going to be interesting to see when that happens. But if you go back and look at their history under Rivera, they've gotten better and better as the season's gone along and built themselves, because they've been a top 10 defense for much of his career. So I think it's going to be interesting how they face. I thought last year's game, they had a chance to win that game, but Cam Newton had 3 interceptions, and that just really took them out of it. And what was it, a 27-28-3 or 24 game? It was a close game, even with those 3 interceptions. So they just got to play mistake-free and do those type things, like Ron Rivera calls it, Panther-type ball. And I think it'll be a good game on both sides.
What's the blueprint for the opposing team of the Panthers to really get Cam out of rhythm, to really have that offense struggle? More so than just stopping the run. Is it putting a spy on Cam? Is it certain personnel that he struggles with? Is it blitzing? Is it them playing from behind? What's the blueprint for the Eagles here to really give Cam Newton and the Panthers a long day?
I don't think it's ever really changed against Cam. You just got to get that quick pressure on him. He's getting rid of the ball faster this year, which has been a plus. But still, that's been the one thing that's kind of held him back over the years, even during his MVP season. When you get a lot of pressure on him, he likes to let it go downfield. The one interesting thing this year is they really haven't gone downfield. They've only gone downfield, I think, for 20-plus yard completions twice all season, which is last in the league. So I think they need to get that into the mix a little bit. But I don't know if there's a real blueprint on him for sure. Because this – other than the pressure, he can keep teams off balance, and I think he's done a better job this year of doing that. And their 2 losses, it was more a factor that the defense just didn't play very well, and they had turnovers in both of those games. So they've got to clean that part of it up to have a chance.
Panthers are healthy. It should be a very hard-fought game. The Eagles are interesting because they had the 10 days off. They played Thursday night, and Carolina had the loss in Washington, and then that 63-yard field goal to kind of give them the win. But they, as you mentioned, have not played very well on the road. Is it a concern? Number one, you're coming to Philly, who seemingly is getting right, and number 2, you're doing it when they have 10 days to prepare for you.
Yeah, you'd think that would be in Philadelphia's favor, to be honest. But then last week, I would have thought it had been in Carolina's favor that Washington's coming off a real embarrassing loss on a Monday night, and that would really, a short week and all that would really throw them back, and it didn't. So it's just different week to week now. It's hard to figure out sometimes the way the season. It seems to be crazy the way things are going. Teams you think definitely got an advantage this week. So it'll be interesting. Will Philadelphia be able to get back in that rhythm they were in when they last played? I think the interesting stat that came out this week is Philadelphia is 3-3, and they've played the league's easiest schedule so far. So I don't know. I think Philadelphia's starting to get right, but I think Carolina has got to prove they can go on the road and win. I think they look really loose this week to me. They were in practice, you never would have known they lost this past week. So I think it's going to be interesting how they come out. I think it's going to be a really good game on both sides for both teams, to be honest.
And as you wrote, David, at ESPN.com in the Carolina Panthers section, both teams still searching for their identities, but this one might help both teams find it. Win. The Eagles go to 4-3, a loss 3-4. A win for Carolina 4-2 was a heck of a lot different than 3-3. That game on Sunday here in Philadelphia. You can listen to the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. Dave, appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Dave Newton, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.